2022 was yet another triumphant year for fans of 2D music projects. Rock, pop, EDM, reggae, and visual K rock made their way to the spotlight. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? From projects with an all-star cast to those betting heavily on new up-and-coming talents, in this episode you'll get to know a bit about some of the most buzzworthy 2D music projects launched in 2022. But there's also some promising projects that, despite having had strong debuts, managed to disappear from the public eye as fast as they appeared, or in case of projects launched a couple of years ago, ended up slowly fading away or going on a hiatus. In this episode, let's cover both the highs and lows of 2D music projects in 2022, with a big focus on the newly launched projects. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is new 2D music projects that took the spotlight in 2022. This is an episode split into, let's say it, two acts. First, you and I are going to talk about the 2D music projects that took the spotlight in 2022, but let's also cover the projects that are slowly fading away, regardless of their quality. As you may have noticed, I'm a massive fan of 2D music projects, and I tend to check almost every single project there is out there, searching for my next favorite song or my next favorite group. But I'm also massively unlucky, as usually the projects I fall deeply in love with some exceptions, quickly fade away, and barely anyone is a fan of those. Still, in 2022, there were plenty of interesting new projects coming forth, with some having yet to make big debut releases, or others are only taking their first steps. The focus this year was on mixed media projects more so than on strictly 2D music projects. This happens as a way for the project to thrive should the music not sell well and connect with the listener. In that way, the project ensures it can continue to release audio dramas, voice comics, have radio shows, and the sort. Now let's talk about some of those big projects. Technoroid. Despite having been announced in 2021, it was only in 2022 that the Technoroid franchise kicked off its activities. Technoroid is a new generation mixed media project created by Noriyasu Agematsu, who is known for his work in Uta no Prince-sama, Ghost Concert, and Visual Prison. Of course, in collaboration with Ruka and Elements Garden. It arrived with an ambitious concept, and quickly fans started to see what Agematsu mentioned when this project was being named as a true mixed media project. Early on in the year, a smartphone game was launched featuring songs by all groups. Without many music releases to the name of its core groups, 2 new units joined in the project, and then the anime series was announced for a premiere in 2023. Technoroid is all about its EDM sound, with each group approaching the music genre in completely different ways, making some of the groups quite charming and interesting to check. For big fans of EDM music and, in a way, the compositions by Ruka and Elements Garden, this is the perfect project featuring a solid mix of veteran and newcomer SEIYUU in the cast. This was easily one of the most active new 2D music projects in 2022. MAGATSU Note: Visual K rock in the Neo Sengoku era. Sounds like a crazy plot, but it is the core of MAGATSU Note, a disruptive mixed media project launched in February 2022. The project quickly started to release digital singles for each of its groups, making fans participate in votings to decide who the winner was in each face-off release. While that part of this project is easily the weakest, where MAGATSU Note shines is in the way it embraced visual K rock music. The project brought in several pro and indie visual kei bands to help out with making the music as aggressive and intense as possible, while still being as stylish as you could expect from visual kei rock. That has resulted in interesting performances by Hiromu Mineta, Shun Horie, Jin Ogasawara, Shinichiro Kamyu, Taiki Bito, and Nobuhiko Okamoto. While the project is rather niche both from its concept and the music genre that is at its core, MAGATSU Note does show the potential to turn into quite the exciting visual kei rock project. Preluders. And we go from feudal lords in Neo Sengoku to superheroes in Sentai series. SEIYUU plus music plus heroes. Surprising everyone, Preluders puts the focus first on SEIYUU, something that reminds me in a way of how some of the now biggest 2D music projects started their activities by putting the focus on the SEIYUU themselves instead of the characters. According to Pony Canyon, Preluders mixes SEIYUU with heroes and music, counting with characters full of individuality. This is a mixed media project with a big focus on music and voice drama. On the vocal end, the franchise brought in Yuma Uchida, Kentito, Junya Enoki, Kohei Amasaki, Ryota Suzuki, Ryota Iwasaki, Shun Horie, Atsushi Tamaru, and Shintaro Asanuma. This lineup of stars, veterans, rising stars, and newcomers brought balance to the franchise, with its three groups having quite a lot of consistency. As far as the music goes, the franchise has pop at its core, with EDM and rock making its way through some of the songs. In 2022, the franchise released 3 CDs, one of those being the first full-length album, By Your Side. Despite all of these, excitement about the music in this franchise is barely existent, which is quite surprising given its stellar cast. Since early November 2022 and up until the time of writing this feature, the franchise has been keeping its activity on social media to a bare minimum, slowly reducing the amount of work being shared. Is this a sign the project crashed and burned right after its launch? Is it a sign the project is regrouping for a new set of CD releases? At the moment, you and I don't know this. Whether the project continues its activities or not is something we will have to wait and see. JAMROCK. The biggest 2D music project announced in 2022 is undoubtedly the reggae music project JAMROCK. Yes, you heard it well, this is a project all about reggae music, being the first ever project to fully focus on this music genre, showcasing its charm and good vibes to an audience that may as well be coming across the music genre for the very first time. The project brings together world-renowned reggae artists and voice actors. And talking about voice actors, you can expect to find a star-studded lineup in here. Makoto Furukawa, Kisho, Jun Enoki, Yuki Ono, Ryohei Kimura, Yuto Emura, Chiharu Shigematsu, and Sho Karino take the stage for this project. However, there is something slightly different in this project. Not all SEIYUU in this case are in charge of singing. Some SEIYUU, for example Yuki Ono and Ryohei Kimura, do not sing, they only lend their voice to the voice dramas, whereas the song performances are left to professional reggae singers. This may be something that takes away the fascination of seeing and listening to SEIYUU tackling reggae music, instead leaving that to professional singers in the genre. If, like me, you prefer to listen to SEIYUU challenging themselves in different music genres, then JAMROCK fails a little bit in this respect. So far, the franchise has released 4 mini-albums and is slowly bringing attention to itself. Among all 2D music projects launched in 2022, JAMROCK is the most interesting due to its unique story, concept, and for embracing reggae music, a first time in the 2D music panorama. I'm sorry. One of the biggest surprises of the year was the mixed media project I'm Sorry. I'm Sorry is a new 2D music project created and with an original concept by the talented SEIYUU, mangaka, and CEO Shinosuke Tachibana. This is the very first 2D music project launched by a SEIYUU, which is quite exciting. At the same time, its lineup is ridiculously good. Toshiyuki Toyonaga, Makoto Furukawa, Shota Aoi, Chiaki Kobayashi, and Yuta Fujisaki complete this lineup. I'm Sorry is marketed as a handsome Prime Minister project with a music battle at its core. However, it seems the concept itself did not attract attention, even with I'm Sorry being featured on several magazines, having released a couple of drama CDs, and having a stellar cast. Soon after its launch, the project announced a cast event that ended up cancelled, and some of the scheduled drama CDs were also cancelled around May 2022. Since then, the project has been on the down low, without communication on social media and no prospect of ever returning to full force. The DOWNLIGHTS in the 2D music industry. And on a contrary note, and following up to the I'm Sorry project, there were some projects that faded away silently, others that announced their hiatus, and others that simply couldn't find their footing. Let's talk a bit about those. The Last Metal. I've talked extensively about The Last Metal and how this project had the awesome potential of educating young fans of 2D music for the rich and fascinating world of heavy metal music. The project has a strong lineup consisting of Kentito, Ryota Suzuki, Arthur Lounsbury, and Keisuke Ueda, and has a promising concept. However, how it was executed was completely wrong. I'm talking about my favorite 2D music project of 2021, and it pains me that it went the completely wrong way due to rockstar egos. It seems that the project brought along several rock stars from the 80s for the composition team in this franchise, and what happened was that the focus was more in highlighting only the legends that were playing in Venomous 8 songs. And what happened to the vocals, you ask? Everyone was singing in unison for 80% of the songs. That's it. Remember how fascinating the project made heavy metal music sound? Yeah, that was thrown away completely in 2022. Welcome to the Deadlight City was an absolutely dreadful debut CD, with everything going wrong for its cast. If you were expecting to have clarity on the vocals, there was none. For those expecting to find high-octane heavy metal music that nodded at the 80s but was still as innovative and exciting as today's heavy metal, this project is not it. The sound was ridiculously dated, and the vocals did not shine. If this was the idea that Vol Productions had when they announced that they were going to make metal music sound cool, well, it is a pity. The CD sold poorly and communication on social media stopped in August 2022. Vol Productions does have a massive challenge to overcome with The Last Metal, especially if it actually wants to take it to its rightful place as one of the most awesome 2D rock music projects. Visual Karma. I was quite critical about Visual Karma's backward mindset of selling merchandise before even releasing music. Gimmick. And I said that this project, while exploring Visual Kei music, something that excites me a lot as a fan of the genre, was not focused on Visual Kei at all. Well, 2022 kicked off and Visual Karma released its first single, Kyoki Shinai Dystopia. It was an okay release but lacking a lot on the performance side, with SEIYUU not matching the style and technique that Visual Kei rock music requires. After that release, the franchise held a fan event and continued to release voice dramas on its Twitter account, up until November 2022, when all communication from the franchise apparently stopped. It is not known if the franchise is just on a hiatus, if it is a strategic pause for a couple of weeks before resuming new content, or if it is officially done for. Regardless of the outcome, this project had the possibility to go against the current and present a unique visual K-rock sound and interesting story while introducing fans to new or relatively new SEIYUU. At the moment of writing this feature, it has failed at everything I just said. Perfection Noise. One of the biggest new 2D music projects launched in 2020, Perfection Noise has slowly drifted away and communication from the franchise has stopped early in 2022. With a stellar lineup including Shoya Chiba, Soma Saito, Kaito Ishikawa and Ryohei Kimura, and mixing individual drama CDs with music, much in the style of their vocalist, the Perfection Noise franchise seems to be fading away with no big perspectives of making a return any sooner. Well, this is what it seems, seeing as social media activity has been stopped altogether since the release of the original soundtrack CD. That being said, Team Entertainment usually has a weird way of working, almost leaving their franchises abandoned before picking them up and giving them a new life. Still, while I don't want to sound pessimistic, it seems that Perfection Noise, as awesome as it was, may be seeing its end fairly soon. A pity, as this is a project that has the potential to hit a really loyal niche market, just like Dear Vocalist or even Dig Rock, yet it seems that Team Entertainment may be giving up on it way too early. Here's to me wishing Perfection Noise can make a comeback anytime soon. Jazz On. Another awesome 2D music project that didn't manage to grab the attention of fans with flashy visuals for their characters or a trendy sound, two elements that are instant hooks for most people just looking for a new fix of handsome characters that sing to drool over. For fans of good music and of variety in the 2D music industry, Jazz On appeared as one of the most unique and refreshing projects. Jazz music was and still is at center stage, bringing with it unique syncopated beats, fancy brass, and stylish contrabass melodies. To top it all off, the franchise has some of the most technical singers and massive jazz fans in its lineup. Shunichi Toki and Makoto Furukawa particularly stood out in this franchise. Unfortunately, in the third quarter of 2022, the Jazz On franchise announced that this new story arc has ended, and as such, they had decided to go on a hiatus until... well, fans will never know until when. On my end, I can only attribute this project fading away to its poor sales numbers. Fans were very few and the music wasn't attracting that many people, and thus, this was the only outcome possible. However, contrary to some of the projects mentioned in this section, there is some hope for fans of Jazz On, as its creators still hope the project can return in the future. Live Us. In 2021, Live Us was one of the buzzworthy projects, bringing an original mixed media project following a dramatic story that is fleshed out through voice dramas and music releases. There are 5 different artists between groups and solo artists that aim at giving color to the world, one of human conflict and deep environmental issues that ended up leading to the ban on live shows. The music genres explored in this project are quite interesting, with classic J-pop, K-pop, R&B, rock and electropop represented by Alpha Tune, Strelitzia, Zin, Unknown Order and Tape Tum. However, while the groups are unique and the lineups feature a good mix of stars and newcomers, Live Us has never lived up to its initial hype, and that is mainly because the franchise refused to release music on streaming platforms, completely cutting short the possibility of striking it big with the international fans. At the same time, it seems that Japanese fans were just not into this project, with most CDs selling poorly. As 2022 wraps up, Live Us has gone from one of the most exciting new 2D music projects to a big what could have been in terms of direction, music quality, and world building. "2022 was a more contained year in terms of the number of new 2D music projects being launched. Following the trend that you could find this year for solo and unit debuts, there was a drop in the number of 2D music projects being launched. However, this was the year with the most polarizing music genres taking the stage. You could find projects that went all out with music genres that are not as loved or common in the 2D music panorama, and found as well a couple of projects with unique concepts or stories. On my end, the most exciting 2D music project of the year is JAMROCK. While I am not the biggest fan of reggae music, it is awesome that fans of 2D music will get to expand their horizons and explore the good vibes of reggae music all through the voices of some of the most exciting SEIYUU talents. MAGATSU Note is too unpolished in my opinion, with some songs not sounding good at all, but there is a lot of potential going on in there, as well as some absolutely bonkers performances by SEIYUU, such as Hiromu Mineta and Jin Ogasawara. On the lowlights, it is a pity that Jason is going on a hiatus, and that Perfection Noise, despite its star-studded cast and awesome music, is disappearing from the public eye. Still, regarding the lowlights, it is worth mentioning that some of the projects that are failing to attract attention have some of the biggest or best lineups in there. So you could say that a 2D music project being successful is not directly tied to whether the voice cast has popular or unknown SEIYUU. It goes way beyond that to the story, music, and character designs. All in all, 2022 was a rather quiet year for fans of 2D music projects, with very few joining in and most focusing on being mixed rather than full-on music projects. Now tell me, which was the 2D music project launched in 2022 that impressed you the most? What do you love about it? Which songs do you recommend everyone to check? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly mail SEIYUU and music-related content. I'll return next week for another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.